Okay, so today we are going to study the part 3 of the series Literature in Chronology. We are going to discuss where from the year 757 AD to 1128 AD. So let us see it in the chronological order. 757 AD, what happened? Opha, who lived up to 796 AD, became the king of Mercia. And in 782 AD, the poetic elegies including Wanderer, Seafarer, Wife's Lament and Ruin were published in the Exeter book of 950 AD. So now let us see these works one by one. Wanderer. This conveys the meditations of a solitary exile on his past happiness as a member of Lord's band of retainers and his present hardships and values of forbearance and faith in the heavenly Lord. Now the warrior is identified as Erdstappa, which is usually translated into the word wanderer, who roams the cold seas and walks the paths of exile. Finally, we come to understand. He comes to understand that life is full of hardships, impermanence. Nothing is permanent. Suffering and everything is governed by God. The poem is thus a wisdom poem, which gives us wisdom. Now, the degeneration of earthly glory is presented as inevitable in the poem. One day, all the glory that we have will be degenerated, contrasting with the theme of salvation through faith in God. Now, the next work that we are going to discuss is Seafarer. Seafarer is found in the Exeter book. Here we have 124 lines that are followed by the single word Amen. It is told from the point of view of the old seafarers who is reminiscing and evaluating his life as he lived it. So an old seafarer, how he is looking back to his olden days and how he is evaluating his life based on his experiences and what he has learned. It also describes the desolate hardships of life of the people who are in the sea, on the wintry sea. It also describes the anxious feelings and solitude of the sea voyage in contrast to the life of land, where men are surrounded by kinsmen, free from dangers and full of food and wine. So people who are living in the land, they are living with their relatives. They are non-people. They are very much free from all the dangers, and they always have food and drinks to have. But what about these people who are in the sea, out there in the sea? They don't have anybody. They are alone and they are struggling with the sea, and they may have to be hungry. Sometimes, as we see in Ernest Hemingway's story, like old man and the sea, sometimes they may even have to eat raw fish. So the hardship cannot be compared. It begins, this particular seafarer, this book begins as a narrative of a man's life at sea, and then changes to become a praise of God, thus giving the reader hope. So it begins as the life of a seafarer. Later on, it turns into giving thanks to God and also filling us with hope. Now, the next work that we are going to discuss is Wife's Lament from Exeter book. This is generally treated as an elegy or a woman's song. Thematically, the poem is primarily concerned with the evocation of the grief of the female speaker and with the representation of her state of despair. So the grief of the female is described, and also the representation of her state of despair is being described. The tribulations she suffered, the problems that she has suffered, leading to her this state of lamentation, however, are described very well and have been subjected to a wide array of interpretations. This particular work was interpreted in so many ways. Another work is Ruin, which is an elegy, a collection of poems and riddles. It evokes the former glory of a ruined city by jumping from present to past. Like the former glory of a ruined city is compared to its present state. So 793 AD we had the first Danish invasions. Monastery of Lindisfarne got sacked. 796 AD what happened? Nemnius wrote the history of Britons, which was an early reference to the historical Arthur. 884 kingdoms were formed: Northumbria, Mercia, East Anglia, Wessex. Now the poems of Cinewulf comes in this era. Let us see the poems which are of Cinewulf. Juliana is an account of the martyring of Saint Juliana of Nicomedia. It is one of the 5 Old English poetic texts that describes the life of saints. It is the second longest work of Cinewolf, Juliana. Now, Christ's second, written in 950 AD, is also known as the Ascension. It consists of 4 signed poems of Cinewolf, which exist in Old English vernacular, primarily framed upon Gregory the Great's homily on the Ascension Day. The poem is assigned to a triad of Old English religious poems in the Exeter book, collectively known as Christ, which comprises of a total of 1664 lines and deals with the Christ advent, ascension, and last judgment. Now, the Fate of Apostles is another work of this time. It is the shortest of Cinewolf's poems. It is a brief description of the martyr of 12 apostles, how they were killed, written in standard alliterative verse. The Fate recites the key events that fall upon each apostle, what happened to their life, what was their life after the ascension of Jesus. It is probably considered as a learning aid in the monasteries. Also provides advice and consolation to the readers. Now, another work of this time of Cinewolf is Elaine of 950 AD, also known as Saint Helena. Elaine, also known as Saint Helena, finds the true cross. It is the longest Cinewolf's 4 signed poems. Longest of Cinewolf's 4 signed poems. The first English account on the finding of Holy Cross by Saint Helena, the mother of Emperor Constantine. 851 AD was Genesis B. Genesis B was also known as the later Genesis. It is included in the partially illustrated Junius manuscript. 869 AD, Danes killed Edmund, who was the king of East Anglia, and Edmund is venerated as a saint. 871 AD, Alfred the Great, king of Wessex, then of Anglo-Saxon, came into power. It is also the possible date of Andreas. Now let us see what all are there in the work Andreas. Andreas is the story of Saint Andrew the Apostle, while commenting on the literary role of him as the hero. Saint Andrew is depicted as an Old English warrior fighting against evil forces. It includes a group of 12 poems, often referred to as the Cinewolf group. 875 AD, Yor becomes separate Scandinavian kingdom. 878 AD, defeat of Danish leader Guthrum happens at Edington. Now, Treaty of Wedmore happens in this year and Guthrum gets baptized. 880 AD, the kingdom of Anglo-Saxon forms. Boundaries of Danelaw gets established. In Dane and Englishmen were given equal value. Alfredian law code and translations happened. Anglo-Saxon Chronicle began. Anglo-Saxon Chronicle is a collection of annals, the record of events that happens year by year in Old English chronicling the history of Anglo-Saxons. The original manuscript was created in the 9th century, possibly in Wessex during the reign of Alfred the Great. Single most important historical, this particular book, Old English Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, is the single most important historical source for the period in England between the departure of the Romans and the decades following the Norman conquest. 899 AD, Edward the Elder, son of Alfred, becomes the king of Anglo-Saxons. 924 AD, Aethelstan, son of Edward, becomes the king of Anglo-Saxons, then of English. 937 AD, Battle of Brunanburh happens. Aethelstan defeats Norsemen and Scots. Battle of Brunanburh. It is recorded as a poem in Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. It records the Battle of Brunanburh, a battle fought on 937 between a English army and a combined army of Scots, Vikings and Britons that resulted in the victory of English. 939 AD, what happens? Edmund becomes the first king to succeed to all England. 946 AD, King Eadwig, son of Edmund, reigns. 959 AD, Edgar, brother of Eadwig, king of English Dunstan, the Archbishop of Canterbury, brings in the monastic Benedictine revival. 961 AD, Oswald, who lived up to 992 AD, becomes the Bishop of Worcester, Archbishop of York from 971 AD. Oswald was a major figure in Benedictine revival. 963 AD, Aethelwood, who lived up to 984 AD, becomes the Bishop of Winchester, becomes the teacher of Wulfstan and Eldrick. He translates Rule of Saint Benedict, which was in Latin, to Old English. He also writes Regularis Concordia, standardizing monastic and liturgical observance. Let us see in detail. Regularis Concordia was the most important document of English Benedictine reform. It was compiled by Aethelwold, a rule for how monastic life should be performed, and included monastical rituals like the procedure of the election of bishop that differed from the continental practice and which led to predominantly monastic episcopacy. 971 AD, Blickering Homilies was written by someone unknown person, anonymous writer. 975 AD, King Edward the Martyr, son of Edgar, he reigns. Edward venerated as saint. Now Judith is a work written from 975 to 1025. It deals with the beheading of Assyrian general Holofernes by Israelite Judith of Bethulia. 978 AD, Ethelred II, half-brother of Edward, becomes the martyr. 980 AD, second wave of Viking invasion happens till 1066 AD. 985 to 987 AD, Abbey of Fleury at Ramsey commemorates the death of Edmund. 991 AD, Apollonius of Tyre, the only Old English romance in manuscript with Wulfstan's homilies. The Wulfstan's homilies were there in that book. 990 to 992 AD, Alfric writes the Catholic homilies. 991 AD, Battle of Maldon. Battle of Maldon was composed within 20 years. It celebrates the real Battle of Maldon of 991 AD, at which the Anglo-Saxons failed to prevent a Viking invasion. 996 AD, Elfric writes the Lives of Saints, which is a work which is aimed at correcting the apocryphal. 997 AD, Berthford of Ramsey writes the life of Oswald. Oswald was a king of Northumbria. 998 AD, Elfric, Latin grammar in Old English is written. Old Testament translations and paraphrases are written. 1013 AD, Sweyn Forkbeard, the king of Denmark, deposes Aethelred. 1014 AD, Aethelred reinstated Wulfstan, Archbishop of York. Wulfstan's sermon to the English. 1016 AD, what happens? The king, Edmund Ironside, son of Aethelred and Eilgifu, reigns. He was defeated by Knut, C-N-U-T. He was murdered in the same year. King Knut, the king of Denmark, from 1018 AD, he reigned. King Knut. 1035 to 37, what happened? The kingdom got divided between Harold Harefoot and Harthach Knut, the two sons of Knut from different mothers. 1037 AD, King Harold Harefoot reigns. 1040 AD, King Harthacnut reigns. 1042 AD, King Edward the Confessor, son of Aethelred II and Emma of Normandy, reigns. 1066 AD, Harold II reigns. The Battle of Hastings happens. William of Normandy defeats Harold. Song of Roland, allegedly sung to the Normans before the battle. It was the earliest record of the poem dates from 12th century. 1066 AD, William I reigns. 1068 to 70, William eliminates resistance throughout England. 1070 to 1071 AD, Hereward the Wake. Rebellion happens in East Anglia. 1086 AD, what happens? Doomsday land survey completed. Oath of Salisbury takes place and main landowner swears loyalty to William. 1087 AD, William II, the son of William I, reigns. 1096 to 1099 AD, First Crusade happens. William II attends. Jerusalem stormed in 1099 AD. 1100 AD, Henry I, son of William I, reigns till 1125 AD. Gesta Hereward, translation of English account of outlaw Hereward the Wake. It is the translation of English account of outlaw by Hereward the Wake. It was a Middle Latin text. Hereward the Wake was the 11th century leader of local resistance to the Norman conquest of England. 1125 AD, William of Malmesbury reigns. The Latin writings includes History of the Kings of the English and Life of Saint Dunstan. Saint Dunstan is an abbot of Glastonbury Abbey, a bishop of Worcester. 1128 AD, the first Cistercian abbey in England formed. Order founded in 1098 in reaction to Benedictine opulence. So this particular part consists of so many historical events. I was just mentioning it as I am intending only to mention. I am not going to describe the history. I am only mentioning the historical events, and I am only intending to describe the literary works written in the period. So I hope it is clear to you. Thank you.